Hey guys, and welcome back. So for this video I wanted to talk a little bit about something different rather than Zabbix, but still it might also be useful for the Zabbix as for database administration, analysis, working, writing queries, trying to understand what is happening and so on. And basically I wanted to share with you the dbForge by the Devart, which is long story short, it's a graphic user interface for everything that you might need to do with your database. And the good thing is that the tool itself, it is supported for the SQL Server, Amazon RDS, Azure SQL, Heroku Cloud databases, MySQL, Postgres. So basically whatever database type you're running, you will definitely find the version for you. And let's switch back to the screen. I'll show you what we have, and this is the web page that I will also link in the description of this video, and we'll talk about some of the features. But I guess it's fair to say, like, the first thing, the software itself is not like a completely free. You can get a free edition, but there are also a paid versions like the standard, professional, and enterprise. Each costs its own price. Pricing is based on the subscription model, so it's not a one-time payment, and each, of course, like enterprise, has the widest list of functionality, then professional, then the standard. But express is also like perfectly fine if you're just playing around at your development installation or whatever. And all of these tools are especially helpful for the cases when you are not, let's say, an expert with the databases. Like when you're super familiar, yeah, I know, like I myself, I also could use just shell to log into the database and do some magic. But whenever you're starting out, it's definitely going to be helpful for you. And we're not going to be able to go through all of the functionalities available because that's going to take forever, because the list is very big. But basically there are features for SQL development, there are features for the database design, source control, administration, data pump, data analysis, general, and that's about it. Installation wise, I already have it installed for me, but I can tell you, and I do have the video of how to install it. So basically it is supported for the Windows, Mac, and also for the Linux. And you can download, and you can also download the trial enterprise edition, so the fattest one with all of the features, for free for 30 days. And installation is like on a Windows, it's straight up like next, select all the features that you want to get, wait a couple of minutes, and then finish, it's done. And whenever this is installed, like this is the graphic user phase that you see in the beginning without a connection to the database. So I already made a connection to my MySQL database, but basically if you need to create a new one, right after the first startup, you will get a pop-up message that will ask, like, fill in all the parameters to connect to your database, or you can just go to the database, new connection, and these are the parameters that you need to fill in, like the type, TCP/IP, host, that's going to be the IP address of your MySQL database, like in this case, port 3306, the default one, user and a password. Just be careful. Remember that if you're creating the user in your MySQL, you can also specify, it's a mandatory thing to specify, like from which IP addresses the user will be able to connect. And at least in all of my tutorials, I always specify localhost, and right now I am connecting from my Windows machine to my Alma Linux virtual machine. So you need to adjust your users, or just think carefully whenever you are creating them. User password, allow saving password, choose the database to which you want to connect. In my case, it is Zabbix. And connection name, localhost, whatever environment category. You can categorize the connections, like either it is a development environment, production, sandbox, or test, which is definitely helpful, especially if you have a lot of them. I guess the worst thing that could happen if you mix up production with a development and execute something that you should not have been executed. So when that is done, on the left side you will see like information schema, performance schema, and a Zabbix database, in which you can easily go through the tables all of them. And in each table, you can also see like what are the columns, what are the constraints, like this, what are the indexes, triggers, depends by, used by, all the information about your database, which doing from the CLI on the Linux could be a bit of challenging. So this is definitely much more convenient, and you can also check out about the triggers on the Zabbix databases that were added, I think, on the version 6.0, and that's why it is a little bit different to migrate from MySQL to the Postgres. So whenever you want to execute some queries, so let's get actually back to the web page, because here we have the feature, the first one that I wanted to talk about, which is the SQL Query Syntax Checker and a Code Completion tool, which just will make your life much easier, again, especially if you are not too familiar with SQL and all the query language and how to write complicated queries and some inner joins and whatever. And if you are, it can just speed up the way how you do that. We'll see like how it works. So automatic SQL syntax check, whether or not you make some mistakes, that will be highlighted, so you will not get confused like why cannot I execute one query or another. The context sensitive name suggestions, like you start to write something and you already get suggested from like what column you might select in this query. Object member list, which looks like this. Column picker for quick list building. So this we're also going to try whenever you need to select like multiple columns from the from your select. Instead of like writing everything down, you can just select with your mouse what exactly do you want to pick up. Join clause auto generation, which is great. I do remember myself when I just started to work with a SQL, it was very hard to understand like how can you actually do the joins and all the inner joins and whatever, and how to connect those two tables. So here it's basically in an automated way. You just need to follow along through the suggestions. Wildcard expansions, auto generation of the table aliases like this, expansion of insert exec and alter statements, keyword case adjustment when typing, context sensitive keyword suggestion, database context detection, smart filtering in the suggestion list. So a lot of different features. And let's just try to type something. So if you want to type some query, I don't know, we could type, let's say select, and as you can see, this already is fixed to the uppercase. Let's select everything from hosts. I don't know, right? Yeah, let's go hosts. And obviously you can also get like already all the tables suggested from the Zabbix database that has word hosts in it. So host H, okay, that's going to be fine. You can select everything, click execute. There we go. We have all the hosts. So what if we don't want to select like all the columns? Then we go back to here, press tab, and we select everything like this. We can go back, delete, and space, and there we go. We can just click okay, I'm interested in a host. Status, I don't know what else I might need, UID, and monitored by, like this. So again, this saves a lot of the time. Select everything, execute. There we go. We have the result of our query. And in case if you want to do those inner joins, as I said, like let's take the case whenever we want to join the table hosts with the table items. So let's say we want to retrieve all of the items that are on host Zabbix server. So essentially we could start like select everything from hosts. No, let's do items. Items I, select everything from items I, inner join C. This is already offering, like based on the constraints that we have, we can already see what kind of joins might make sense for this query. So we're joining hosts, and this is happening automatically. So inner join host H on where item host ID equals H host ID. And what I want to select, let's change this. No, let's do where h host equals, if I remember correctly, it is the Zabbix server, and we can run this, select everything, execute. There we go. Everything from the host Zabbix server, and we can adjust this. And let's say I want to select h host, then item key, and item ID, and host ID. Should be fine. So select everything, execute. There we go. We have the result of our query in a very simplified way. The second thing is the SQL Source Control in a dbForge, which basically is like whenever you're developing a database, it's not going to be in a way that, okay, you open the Linux terminal, connect to your MySQL and start like create table, whatever. Most likely everything going to be done through the source control, and for the dbForge, the supported for all the popular platforms for the version control systems like the Subversion, Microsoft Azure DevOps, Git, Perforce P4, Mercurial, and SourceGear Vault. So the way how you configure it actually is through this menu, where in addition a developer can choose a database development model, either dedicated or shared. Depending on a database development model, developers can work a local clone copy on a database, or the same database copy and repository updated with the latest database version. For more information about the differences between these models, check in the shared and whatever. Source controlling a working folder, which looks like this: Source Control Manager. Change history, which is, I guess it's like one of the greatest things of the source control, because whenever you are doing directly in your database, let's say you decided not to run the queries, but if we're talking about like building the database, deciding what kind of indexes you will have, what kind of the columns, what kind of the tables and constraints and whatever, if you do everything directly in the database, obviously you don't have a version control. So if something happens, you cannot really look back in the history and understand like what kind of architecture for the database was present before this, and it's just very complicated to follow along. However, with the version control, you can have like, okay, in this version we had this architecture, in that version we added indexes, then like in a query execution plan we see that things went much worse. So what we decide is we just roll back to the previous version, which can again be done through the SVN or SVN or Git or whatever. Source controlling the data, and more useful features are there. If you want to create a TSQL tests in the dbForge Studio for SQL Server, that is also possible. So the tool focuses on testing the business logic of the database and verifies that in case of any changes, the existing functionality keeps on working as expected. So what we get out of this is to improve and maintain the quality of the code, implement a SQL unit testing isolated from dependencies, maintain database integrity and data consistency. Unit testing has no impact on the actual database and no data cleanup. Save time on automated scheduling, units test via the command line interface, so everything gets automated, and simulate the behavior of the database objects to run unit tests with the predefined tests against the database. And to install it, like to use it, the tool uses the open source TSQL framework for SQL Server to write the unit tests in the TSQL. So this will prevent you from switching between the different tools while working. Everything going to be in same place in the dbForge Studio for the SQL Server. So to run the test, first you need to install the TSQL framework. That will create the TSQL objects and SQL serial objects for the selected database. For this, select the database against which you want to run the tests, and unit test install the test framework. So creating unit tests for the SQL Server databases through this menu, unit test, add new test, managing SQL test cases and test classes, running SQL unit tests, using pre-written test samples, which is great for the beginning. Like if you are not sure what tests exactly do you want to run, you can just use some of the pre-written. SQL query optimization with a query profiler. So this will be definitely helpful for your like Zabbix installation whenever you're running in some issues with the performance. Like if you see that some queries are running slower then they should, right? You get some slow queries in the Zabbix server log file. So instead of running this directly on the console, where the only thing you get is just a blunt query execution plan, which is hard to understand if you don't have any knowledge. So here in a dbForge, you will get explain plan and profiling results and monitor session statistics, save time on detecting the bottlenecks, time delays on the different stages, compare differences in query profiling results visually, get a clear and automated way to profile your database queries, fetch SQL query data faster, and trace SQL queries and diagnose performance issues with a slow query. So it looks very beautiful. And you can also get like the visualization diagram of the actual execution plan of your query. So here in this result, we can see example of estimated rows, estimated executions, average row size, estimated CPU cost, IO cost, which is great actually to see how much actually resource hungry this query is. The weight statistics, plan tree, top operations list, table IO, compare profiling results between all sort of different whenever you change the query. So if you see that there is some problem with the query, you can try to optimize it and compare the previous results to see if that actually gave any benefits. And the last one I wanted to mention is the a simple way to release a database faster and safer via automation. So dbForge is also perfectly suitable for the DevOps, which is definitely a trending thing right now. So embrace the DevOps automation and management approaches, implement database continuous integration and continuous delivery, so CI/CD, minimize SQL Server database deployment risks, drive quality and frequency of SQL Server database updates, reduce overall SQL Server database costs. So whatever, all of the good things. And how it works is like adopting the database DevOps best practices will allow you to deliver faster, more often, and with fewer errors. And yeah, so development, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and operation, which is the main thing of the DevOps. All database DevOps tool in one IDE, so everything in the dbForge, and this is whatever you can do, like build, populate, then test, format SQL, document everything which you need, build the packages, synchronize, import, export, and then publish the code, which should have everything up and running. So I do believe you already understood that it's like basically impossible to talk about everything, because the list of the stored features is just amazing. So I would recommend you to try it out, and I will mention again that there is a free trial for the 30 days, so you don't need to actually buy it. So just click download here, and yeah, so click download here. You will get the enterprise trial version. You don't need to sign up with a credit card or whatever. You just need to fill in your email, which, as far as I remember, didn't even require any like confirmation. So you can choose to not expose your personal email, and then you will get it, install like 5 minutes, get it up and running, and then you can play around with all the things that you can find here, like comparison, data, SQL rollback, commit, debug information, all about the database. So definitely a lot of things to cover. I hope this will be helpful for someone. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you later in the next videos. Goodbye.